Well, hello everyone. I want to talk to you in this first video today about our research paper guidelines since the research paper comes up fairly soon and this information will be helpful to you. So if you want to follow along with me, click on content up at the top of our course page and then look in the left-hand sidebar for research paper guidelines and materials, and then click on research paper guidelines. So for this paper, you'll submit a well-researched essay exploring in depth an American text. It might be poetry, it might be fiction, that is representative of one of the periods, so one of the time periods and the genres, the types or kinds of literature we're studying this semester. So, it may be representative of realism, it may be local color realism, it may be naturalism, it might be African American lit of the late 19th, early 20th century, it could be early 20th century poetry, it could be imagism, it could be early 20th century prose, drama of the 20th century even. We're not reading any drama in this class, but it might be a play. It could be Harlem Renaissance writings. It could be later 20th century prose. And prose, by the way, is just a word that means it's not poetry. Or it could be later 20th century poetry. And again, if you're confused over which readings are placed into which categories, you can look at our syllabus and you can look at the unit titles and you'll see how they fall. Now you may, if you wish, choose a reading that is listed on our class syllabus that we are reading in this course together over some point at the semester as your chosen text that you're writing about. And alternatively, you could choose a text that is not listed in our syllabus. That choice is up to you, but you must choose a text that is written by an American author. So if the author is not American, because this is American literature, then you can't choose it. And also you must choose a text written within the time period that our class is focused on, which is modern American literature, and that's from 1865 to the present moment. So if it was written before 1865, you may not use that reading, and you would receive a 0 on your paper, which would not be good since this is worth 20% of your final grade. So make sure you're choosing an American writer within our time frame if you choose something not on our syllabus. Here are the important dates that you need to know regarding the research paper. So the first one coming up happens in week 10, and that's Monday the 21st of March through the 27th of March, and that's our idea workshop for the research paper. So I will give you some idea worksheet questions, and that's just a term that I have come up with, where you begin to brainstorm and sort of generate ideas for your upcoming paper. So to get to that assignment, you would click on content, and again, research paper materials, where we are right now, but instead of looking for research paper guidelines, look for the idea worksheet for the research paper, and that will give you the questions that you need to answer. So you can take your time in typing out your answers, and then to submit, you want to click on the assignments tab up at the top of our course page and on idea worksheet to submit. And you need to do that before 11:59 p.m. on Sunday the 27th. And so after you do that, I will provide you with some feedback to your questions that will be very helpful to you as you then begin to write a rough draft of your research paper. So you want to give me a few days, obviously, to get through the process of responding to everyone in the class, because there are 30 people in the class. That's a lot of responding. And you want to go back in and look at the comments I've made on your idea worksheet, and then use those comments as you're writing your research paper. So the next important date happens that following week, in week 11, And week 11 begins Monday, the 28th of March, and it runs through Sunday, the 3rd of April. So during that week, you want to submit a copy of your rough draft in progress of the research paper. You want to do that before 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday, the 30th. If you do it after that, you won't receive credit for it, and I may not be able to respond to you and comment on your draft, which will be really not good. So make sure you do this on time. So click on the assignments tab again and look for rough draft of the research paper. Aim for at least 2 pages of writing. Aim for 2 pages. Note that a draft that is less than a page will really not present enough material for me to be able to offer you much feedback on. And so you're really just spinning your wheels. I will get back to you again with my extensive comments, and I will comment extensively on the content of your paper, on your sources, on your MLA, on grammatical errors, typos, etc. It will be extremely important, for you to thoroughly read through the comments I make on your rough draft. You need to, again, give me a few days there because I'm getting through 30 of them, and that's in addition to all the other assignments coming in for all the classes that I'm teaching. And then you want to look carefully at all my suggestions and the comments I've made, and you want to enact my suggestions into a final draft of your paper. Because if you don't, every error you made is going to be a point deduction, or 2 points or more, depending on what it is. So take advantage of the fact that I'm a professor who will provide you with this extensive feedback. Many will not, because it is highly time consuming. It's essentially like grading your paper twice, and that's a lot of work for us to do. So take advantage of that. Not enacting the changes that I suggest will highly hurt your grade. So note too that 10 points are deducted from your research paper grade if you do not upload that rough draft before 11:59 p.m. On that due date, which is Wednesday, the 30th of March, Wednesday. So make sure you do it. And then the final draft of your research paper comes due during week 12. And again, you'll submit it via the assignments tab. You'll look for final draft. And remember the policy there that 10 points are deducted from your research paper grade for every calendar day that paper is late. And that includes the day that it's due, and that includes weekends. So papers aren't accepted after 5 days because they would be automatic Fs. So make sure that you stay on top of it and get it in on time. Here are the specifics that you need to know. So the final draft of your paper should be at least minimum 4 full pages in length. If it's less than 4 pages, you'll get points deducted. So it needs to be 4 to 6 pages long. If you go over the 4 pages, that's great, but you don't want to be under it. And these need to be full pages, 4 full pages. And that does not include your works cited page. This is 4 full pages of writing. Obviously, it needs to be typed, double-spaced in Times New Roman 12-point font, standard margins. And you're going to use MLA citation, and you're going to include a works cited page that is separate. Your paper should contain a total of 4 reliable sources. 4 total. One of those will be the text, the reading that you're actually analyzing and researching. So in addition to that one, you need 3 more sources. If you don't have 4 total sources, you're going to get points deducted. At least 2 of those 4 sources has to consist of a reliable book or article. So you need to consider searching for critical analysis of your chosen text. And the best way to do that is by taking advantage of our library databases. The remaining 2 sources may consist of non-traditional ones. such as documentaries, films, newspaper articles, something like that. So they may be non-traditional. They may not be from a book or an article. But be sure to incorporate quotes and paraphrases from every single one of those 4 sources, especially the text you're writing about, to back up your claims. You need actual quotes, and they need to be cited in MLA. So the objective of this assignment is to conduct research focused on the rhetorical and contextual analysis of a specific text that is representative of one of the time periods and genres we're studying this semester. So let's break this down. You're conducting a rhetorical analysis. Think back to English 1010 and what that word rhetoric means. So rhetoric means essentially effective communication, right? So how is that writer communicating? Is that writer using pathos, maybe, emotion, logos, logic, facts, data, statistics, ethos? Does the writer seem credible to you, reliable to you? Why? Why is that? How does the writer establish some credibility? And then what techniques rhetorically is the writer using? So if it's a creative piece, if it's a poem, if it's a short story, the writer is probably using symbolism, imagery, allusion, maybe alliteration. There are all of these different techniques that the writer may be using. If it's a poem, the writer is probably using all of those things, maybe rhyme as well. Think connotative meaning, right? So what are the various underlying meanings of all the images that you're seeing in the poem or in the piece? And so contextual analysis means that you're looking at the context of that piece. And I tell my 1010 students to think of context like an atmosphere surrounding a message or a piece of communication, whether that's a short story or a poem or an article or whatever it is, right? So the context would be, what's the time period? What was going on during that time period? What was the mindset? What was happening in the world and in the country at that moment? Here's a good example of context and how it influences writing. So if I were to stand up in Birmingham, Alabama in 1850 during the antebellum period before the Civil War and read from a piece I wrote that announced that all people should be treated equal regardless of their skin color, what would happen to me? Right? It would not be good. Even if I was white and I read from a piece like that, I'm probably going to be ostracized, run out of town, or worse, right? If I'm black, I'm going to be killed probably. And that's the context of that time period and that place, right? That's the mindset of those people. Now, what if I stood up in 1970 in Birmingham and read from a piece like that? The context would be different because the mindset is different, right? And so hopefully nobody would kill me or hurt me or ostracize me. There might be a few people who still would do that, but hopefully the majority of people would not do that anymore. That's context. So and analyze your reading contextually as well. How does the time period in which this piece is written, how does the author's life and the author's own experience, how does all of that affect the writing? And so your paper needs to explore and offer an answer to the following inquiry questions. So what particular time period or genre does your text represent? What elements within your chosen work clue you into the fact that, hey, this is realism, this is local color realism, this is naturalism, this is imagism, this is the Harlem Renaissance. Don't just tell me, well, it was just written in this year and that's how I know. Explain to me the elements, the characteristics within that reading that connect it to a time period or a genre. Okay, I know that War is Kind is naturalism because clearly the writer's being sarcastic and the writer doesn't believe war is kind. The writer presents the horrors of war graphically, right? And there's no hope. And it seems that this fallen soldier is just a hapless victim of war and of the universe, and there's nothing he can do, right? This is how I know that War is Kind is a piece of naturalism. I know that Desiree's Baby is realism, and I know that it's local color realism because I'm hearing dialect, I'm hearing the vernacular in this piece. I am getting a sense of what this place and time was like. I know also that there are some elements of naturalism in Desiree's Baby because there doesn't seem to be much hope for Desiree. She seems to just be doomed. She does have some choices, so I could argue it's realism. Her choices are limited, right? But it's a pretty dark piece. How do I know that Amy Lowell is writing imagism and not imagery? Because I'm seeing these short, very concise images, and I can give examples of that, right? Secondly, you want to tell me what the author's main messages and themes in the piece are. So what are the main themes in Desiree's Baby? Well, the themes focus on racism, what a culture of racism does to people. They focus on feminism. You know, should Desiree have stood up for herself? She obviously couldn't easily do that because she was financially dependent on her husband and on the social norms of the day, right? And she had no way to survive once she walked away from that plantation. And if you look at a piece like The Wife of His Youth, what are the themes? Well, it's self-identity, it's loyalty, it's what is the nature of real, honest-to-God love, right? So explain those themes to me and tell me how you know. Give me quotes to support that. What rhetorical techniques are at work? So are we seeing metaphor, simile, the rule of three, symbolism? If it's a poem, are we seeing free verse, slant rhyme, etc.? Give me examples of that. Look for supporting sources that comment on all of these things. And then why does this particular text have meaning? How does it make us more conscious, maybe, of certain philosophical ideas like determinism? So with War is Kind, or with a piece like Ambrose Bierce's An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, which both are naturalism pieces, there's determinism going on there. In other words, these people's fate will be predetermined. That's the naturalist view. So if you're a male and you're turning 18 right at the time of the Civil War, goodbye to you. The universe has it in for you. You may not live through this, right? That's determinism, this idea that our fates are predetermined and there's nothing we can do. That's a very dark naturalism sort of idea. Or maybe it's the opposite of that. Maybe it's showing realism and free will. The idea we have choices that we can make, like in William Faulkner's Barn Burning. We have a choice there. The young boy in Barn Burning has to make a choice. Am I going to do what my father is telling me to do, even though I know it's wrong? Or am I going to stand up and be a man and do what I know in my heart is right and rat my own father out because he's an arsonist and someone could die, right? So he's exercising his freedom of will. Does this piece maybe have political or ideological values like equality, freedom of speech? So we might look at pieces like Du Bois and Washington. They're certainly talking about political values there and how the African American community can go about finally achieving equality and freedom of speech. So you might see that there. So you want to answer all those questions within your paper, and that gives you much to write about. To conduct a successful research paper, you need to include a clear, identifiable thesis statement, which occurs at the end of your introductory paragraph, paragraph 1, right? So it might be something like a careful analysis of Desiree's Baby by Kate Chopin reveals the genre, theme, rhetorical techniques, and meaning of this piece. And then you go on and you write about those things. It needs paragraphs with clear topic sentences. So your very first sentence is going to tell your reader, okay, here's what I'm going to discuss in this paragraph. And that support your main ideas and your main points. It needs a minimum of 4 sources, with your text being one of them, right? And 2 of them have to consist of reliable articles or books. So your main source, your 2 reliable articles or books, your other source that may be non-traditional. You must have quotes and or paraphrases, but preferably quotes from your sources that support your points, cited correctly in MLA, both in text in the body of your paper and correctly on that separate works cited sheet. So if you'll choose a reading that especially interested you, the quality of your writing will be better because you'll find the reading more interesting. And then finally, you see the TBR, the Tennessee Board of Regents student learning outcomes that we're evaluating in the grading of this research paper, and there's an accompanying sheet in the same section if you're interested in that, that you can certainly read. And I would urge you to utilize our Pellissippi Library's databases, and I will create a separate announcement that will give you further information on that. Also, you can click on the Ask a Librarian tab, which is found down at the bottom of our main course site. It's also found on the library's main page, and you can actually chat with a librarian in real time. And you can say to him or her, hey, I'm doing a research paper on Mary E. Wilkins Freeman's A New England Nun, and I need some good sources. Can you help me find them? And the librarian will come back and say, hey, I'm happy to do that. Here's what I found, right? And so those are just the basic guidelines, and certainly, we'll be communicating further about the paper as we get closer to it, but I hope this is helpful. Thanks for your patience.